Church of the Larger Fellowship, a Unitarian Universalist congregation with no geographical boundaries. We believe in cultivating curiosity and transformation that is rooted in profound love. The COVID-19 pandemic has irrevocably shaped how connections are formed in congregations across the United States and the world. The Church of the Larger Fellowship is committed to being a resource within Unitarian Universalism and beyond. From worship to covenant groups, from classes to pastoral care, and from our monthly magazine Quest to our online community hub and our letter writing ministry. We have found ways to build connection and community, even through the screen. We have been a model for ministry on the margins, providing services for isolated Unitarian Universalists, becoming a spiritual lifeline for our members in prison. The CLF supports the ministries of those who hold target identities: Blue, Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism; Trust, Transgender Religious UU Professionals Together; and Drum, Diverse Revolutionary Unitarian Universalist Multicultural Ministries, just to name a few. We know better than anyone how deep and meaningful connections can be formed, even from a distance. Unitarian Universalists have faced many challenges in these times, and we continue to persevere and fight for justice and equity for all people, especially during moments of crisis. We are proud to be a leader in this faith movement, and we invite you to get involved in our ministry. We strive to be a place where anyone from anywhere can find spiritual refuge anytime they need it. Welcome to the Church of the Larger Fellowship. We are so excited to bring you an all-new episode of The View. The View is a weekly Unitarian Universalist talk show discussing important faith-based topics from an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural perspective. Every Thursday for the past 7 years, we have welcomed guests from every corner of the world. Our guests are writers, scholars, activists, and religious thought leaders who are shaping Unitarian Universalism and society for the 21st century and beyond. I hope today's show inspires you. Hope it builds your faith. Hope it gives you perspective to see the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in your life. Enjoy the message. Hi, welcome to Voices of Unitarian Universalism, also known as The VU. My name is Aisha Hauser. My pronouns are she and her. I come to you from the land of the Coast Salish people, also known as Seattle, Washington. And I am a brown-skinned woman with bright curly hair. It is black and gray, but I'm choosing to give emotion to it. I am wearing a green t-shirt and a keffiyeh, symbol of freedom for the Palestinian people. And today we're going to talk about abolition and theology. But until we get there, Dante, how are you? Where are you?
Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Dante Hilliard, Learning Fellow for the Church of the Larger Fellowship. I am in the land of the Piscataway people, Baltimore, Maryland, USA. I'm a pleasantly plump African-American man with long reddish-brown locks with a black headband on and black framed glasses. And I look a little woolly mammoth today because this is I was in finals facial hair look that I haven't gotten rid of yet. DC, what's going on?
Oh, hey, everybody. I'm Reverend DC Fortune. I am coming to you from the banks of Penns Creek, which leads into the Susquehanna River in central Pennsylvania, historic land of the Lenni Lenape and Susquehannock people. My pronouns are he, him, and I am a fat-ish, white trans man going increasingly bald. And I'm wearing glasses, and it's a gorgeous day. It was supposed to be all rainy and gross, and it turned out sunny, and I'm kind of mad about it because I had planned for icky indoor things, and now there's nice outdoor things, and I can't get to them. So anyway, Michael, how are you, dear?
I'm here. Michael Tino joining you. Pronouns are they and them. Here on the land of the Wappinger, Kitchewan, and Munsee Lenape peoples, also known as Peekskill, New York, on the Hudson River, a little north of New York City, where I think it's still a gray, rainy day today here. Maybe it's turning sunny here too, because I'm not that far away from you. It was gray and rainy last I looked outside.
You get our used weather, so it'll be a little bit.
Used
weather. Like we'll see. Like I have all my my shades closed, so as not to distract me from looking outside today. But it's spring here in New York. I am a fat, white, almost bald, dudeish looking person with aqua colored glasses and a green t-shirt, and I also have several days of facial hair accumulated on my face, but I don't have a good reason for it.
You had MFC meetings.
Yes, DC and I have been in training with the Ministerial Fellowship Committee for the last 2 days. We both serve on that body, which credentials ministers and keeps people in right relationship with Unitarian Universalism. And and there were meetings that I had before and after those, and I just was too lazy this morning to take a sharp blade to my face. So sue me, right? I'm here. It's spring in New York. I am at what I call peak iris. For the my little house in Peekskill, New York, sits on a very tiny piece of land. It is very, very tiny piece of the Wappinger and Kitchewan nation's land, and we, my husband and I, and increasingly my daughter, who likes to help, have made the most of this very tiny little piece of land. So there are vegetables in the back, and native plants in the corner, and perennials in the front. And I'm anti-grass, not marijuana grass, but plant.
Right. You're anti-grass. You're pro-weed.
I'm anti-lawn. Yes.
Okay, anti-lawn.
Anti-lawn, pro-weed. There we go. most of what's in back of my house is now micro clover, because I've replaced the grass with clover.
Smells good. The bees like it. The deer like it. The bunnies like it.
Know it because it only grows this tall.
Yeah. Smells good.
So this is to say that there are irises in my front yard, in my tiny yard, and when we are at peak iris, the entire front yard is a sea of lavender.
Oh, nice.
And so it is absolutely stunning. And these are some sort of old-timey strain of iris that smell like grape candy.
Ooh.
It is they have this sweet, sweet smell. And so they're fragrant. And so not only is it lavender, but there's this gorgeous fragrance wafting from the front yard anytime you go through it, which is it's one of my favorite moments in the garden, when all the irises are blooming. Because when we moved into this house, there was this little gnarled knot of irises that didn't bloom in the corner. They were so gnarled and
neglected and sad.
Because the people we bought our house from were elderly folks who couldn't take care of the garden. And I knew they were irises because I know what iris leaves look like. And so we dug them up and we divided them and we planted them, and they turned out to be these these gorgeous irises. And part of this season for me is the fact that every August, Eric, my husband, digs up about a third of them and divides them to keep the to keep them healthy.
Wow.
He's divided about every 3 years. So he digs up about a third of them, cuts up the iris rhizomes, which are the things they grow from, and then I mail them out to people. So like if you're friends with me on Facebook, like look for my iris giveaway in August.
Ooh.
So
If I have a place by then, I am totally going to get
it's
iris.
every August, DC. So just if you don't have a place this August and you have one next
Do
August,
they have to be planted in August?
they have to be planted if you want them to bloom the next year, pretty soon after you get them.
Okay, so
like early September, early to mid September, especially in Maine.
Okay.
It
gets a little colder there faster than other places.
Right. If I was mailing them to Florida, they'd have until whatever, November or December to plant them. So the siblings of my iris, this is to say that the siblings, the clonal siblings of these irises exist in gardens all over the United States.
That's awesome.
Sounds like Mrs. Rumphius.
It almost is. And so people send me pictures, which I love.
Oh my God.
And
That's
so
awesome.
when they start blooming in Louisiana and Texas, right? And then they bloom in like Georgia and Arkansas, right? And
these little queer irises in all of these
bloom in North Carolina and Virginia. And it's such joy. Like people are, oh, my Michael irises are blooming. And then there are ones that bloom after mine, the ones in Massachusetts and Vermont and Wisconsin, and it's a happy thing for me.
I love it. I am growing strawberries for the first time. I will not be sharing them because I think I'm going to grow like 4 and I'm eating them.
You'll grow for the first year.
Huh?
You'll grow for the first year, but give the plants a little space to.
Yeah, I only got 3 and they're in a big tub. But the other thing I wanted to name is today, May 15th, according to Karishma Gottfried, seminarian on Facebook. It is according to Karishma, this is probably written down somewhere, today's the day in 1961 that the Unitarians married the Universalists. And we have not divorced yet, so this is good. This is our whatever the number is since 1961. Wait, I could do math. 59?
No, 64.
Why can't I do math? Oh,
I was born in 65, and that means that I will be 60 this year, and I am deeply offended by the whole thing.
I'm going to be, I think I'm perpetually 50 in my head because I was born in 70. That makes sense. Okay, so 59.
DC, are you offended by the age you will be or that the subject matter? Like, what's happening?
Like, I'm offended. Like, I don't feel mature enough to really be 40. Never mind 60.
Yeah, I hear you.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm total Gen X kid. Like, we're never going to grow up. We're Toys R Us kids, and we took that shit for real. And so, and so people, like, I'm looking around and I'm like, what do I expect of a 60-year-old? Not this.
I have a wondering for you. I don't know that we've ever talked about it on the show, and you can tell me that, like, you don't want to talk about it. If it's like too vulnerable, and
sure,
Dante and Aisha, like when I was a young queer, like a baby queer, it was the height of the AIDS crisis, and I was basically told that like queer people are mostly dead before we're 40.
Yeah.
And I don't say that to joke. It was really heavy.
No, that was real.
And so when I turned 40, I was like, it was like,
I have no plan.
I didn't have a kid until I was 41 because I was planning on being dead, like in my head, not like explicitly, but like there was something deep seated in me that was like, well, if I'm going to be dead by the time I'm 40, I shouldn't have a kid.
Wow.
I remember growing
I'm not
up
60 yet, but
I remember growing up not believing that I would see 30. 40 just seemed like a fantasy. And that was because I was in high school during the Reagan years, right? We were all really quite sure we were going to be vaporized in a nuclear holocaust.
The day after, remember that movie?
Right? Oh, Jesus God. That was my freshman year of college. And so I didn't worry about student loans. I didn't worry about credit cards, right? Like, we're going to be dead in a couple of years. And like, debt? Who cares? Oh boy, did that bite me in the ass.
Are those messages that you got to, Dante or Aisha?
What? That we were. Go ahead, Dante. No, you go.
Ooh, that was today too.
So yeah, the move anniversary was the 13th.
Yeah. I remember that.
The government bombed an entire city block in the middle of Philadelphia to get some quote unquote black revolutionary radicals. They destroyed an entire community with a bomb. Yep. Anyway, distract. Okay, so I can't. Let's see. So I go to college. I graduated high school in '89, right? So I'm college age in the '90s. So I'm really young in the tail end of the horror, right? Of the losing people. So I lost one friend. He literally passed away on my birthday, and it was homecoming weekend of our senior year. And he passed. And it was again, I went to a little bitty HBCU. We only had 2,000 students. So this shook the entire campus. So I grew up with the consciousness around I mean, that was the biggest thing. Like, if you were like, oh, I think I'm gay, then it was like, oh God, I'm probably gonna die.
Yeah.
Like, those things went part of the difficulty of coming to terms with your truth around sexuality in that time was it kind of meant you were on the chopping block. And God forbid, when you tell your parents, even the most progressive parents were going to be afraid that you were going to die. So I remember that. Like, okay, well, this is the view, so I'm gonna say this. So I remember the first time I was adult. I was in my 30s before I had a full panel of STI screening. And I was living in Chicago at the time. And they were like, well, when was the last time you, and I was like, oh, I've never done those things. And everyone is looking at me like, because I'm in the city of Chicago where there's a pandemic. They're like, what do you mean you've never? I said, oh, I've been getting tested for HIV since I was like 18, faithfully. But what I realized is, and I don't know if y'all remember that, HIV testing and STI screening were separated.
Yep.
It never happened in the same place.
Right.
And so I knew, like, I went faithfully and I had HIV screenings, but I was in my 30s before I had an STI panel. And I was like, wow, this is okay, I'm going down the rabbit hole. But yeah, I just remember realizing how they separated those two things and what the cost might have been because of co-infection and things like that. So,
yeah.
Wow. Well, I didn't grow up, obviously, because I was not a queer kid. I grew up with a Muslim immigrant mother who any minute the day of Judgment Day was coming. So the world was going to end. On top of the day after. So I had a lot of anxiety as a kid that the world was going to end any moment. And Allah was always mad at me because I was always fucking up. And so I had an aunt by marriage one time say to me as an adult, she said, it's no wonder you went to a religion that accepts everyone and everything. And there's no hell. I go, yeah, quite intentional.
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was out of I mean, it was interesting because it was like, it wasn't until I got deprogrammed as an adult that I look back and like I was in constant fear of not being able to grow up because the end days were coming, like the end days. So I understand the evangelical thinking. Like I grew up with it. Like I understand what and how bought in and how invest. I mean, this is a worldview that is not debatable. It's not up for debate. But what is up for debate is abolition. So let's take a turn. So two things I want to say as we start the conversation about abolition theology, our congregational study action item that the CLF is putting forth at this year's General Assembly in Baltimore. Two things. One is God bless the Unitarian Universalists who, there's only been a couple who've been in response that emailed me this week because I wrote the weekly email about it, who said, well, and other people have been saying, we need prisons. Okay, so first, the idea that in June we are going to take a vote, decide to study abolition, in July all prisons are going to be shut down. I wish we had that power. A, B, take it down a notch, Unitarian Universalists. And two, the idea, there's also the I don't know if it's misunderstanding or ignorance. I don't know what word to put it, but there is a lack of understanding of the facts of our justice system, our carceral system, and not every rapist. In fact, the actual number of people who commit sexual assault who are in prison is low. So it's not that, and the people who commit crime. So the people put in prison are intentionally are disproportionately, given the proportion of how many Black people and people of color in the United States, disproportionately are incarcerated, right? Whether or not it's a valid, even charge, so on and so forth. So given that, what we're proposing is to study this for 3 years, to study it, to think about a different worldview, to lean into how do we imagine a society where we don't have this binary of right, wrong. If you do this, you're going to jail forever. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, and you know where I start is we have to figure out our theology,
right,
of humanity, and we have, like, ours, Unitarian Universalists, and then the public theology. And someone did write to us and was like, public theology. Oh. I'm like, yes, there is an implicit theology behind our public policy. And the implicit theology behind our public policy is that some people are disposable. And that some people have negated their inherent dignity and worthiness by committing acts that we as a society have deemed makes them unworthy. Right? It makes them, right? And if we as Unitarian Universalists claim that nobody is disposable, if we as Unitarian Universalists claim that there is nothing you can do to make you irreconcilable to the love of God, you know, the Universalists might say, or to make you irredeemable, or to make you unworthy as a human being, then we need a society that reflects that, right? Like, once the society reflects that, then we can think about, are there some people who have done such heinous things that they need a way to be separated from the rest of society? And if so, how do we do that in a way that maintains their humanity? Right? Like, I don't think we need prisons. I put that in scary air quotes for those of you listening to the podcast. I don't think we need prisons. But we certainly don't need dehumanization centers. Right? Right? We certainly don't need concentration camps where people are sent without due process. Right? We certainly don't need cages for children.
Jesus.
in immigration holds. Right? We certainly don't need those things. And then let's work our way up. Like, we certainly don't need solitary confinement. We certainly don't need, isolating people and restricting their mail and restricting their contact with loved ones and restricting their personal growth opportunities and their actual healthy relationship opportunities. Like, we need to treat people like human beings. And there's a theology behind not treating people like human beings. And it's exactly the opposite theology that we claim.
I remember in seminary, Nick, whose last name I can't remember, he was the president of Andover Newton at the time. And he taught a class called Show Me the Money. And what he said was, Nick Carter. And what he said was, every budget is a theological statement.
Yep, including state budgets.
And I would expand that to say every policy is a theological statement about what is important, about who is deserving, about who gets access to things. And that's all the smart I've got today.
But it's true. That's pretty smart. Right? So what's the
so I'm okay with that.
What's the theological statement in a budget that includes income from enslaved people? What is the theological statement behind that? Because every state in the United States has a state budget that includes income from the labor of enslaved people in prisons. Every state.
Okay. So, I'm in space. So, is it fair to say that the Unitarian theology of hell is it doesn't exist? Is that fair?
Well,
Universalist.
Universalist. Okay.
It doesn't exist after we're dead.
Okay.
Let's put it that way. It doesn't exist after we're dead, because I believe there's space in our theology for hell to exist right here.
Okay. Because so if our UU theology is anti-hell, if our UU theology is justice-centered, how do we justify plantations in the 21st century?
Or in the 20th century or the 19th. But
right. Slavery was not abolished.
Nope.
Prisons are the new plantation. And they build prisons based on urban community school enrollment numbers.
Jesus Christ.
And they build the prisons in communities that are far from those urban communities. In order to artificially inflate the population of those areas.
Yes.
And give more representation to conservative people.
Yes. Totally. Absolutely.
Yep.
So, and what does it mean that in our modern society, we say the price of breaking covenant is slavery, civil covenant. The price of breaking a civil covenant is slavery. Are we trying to justify what you did to my ancestors? Because we didn't break civil covenant. You broke humanitarian covenant. You broke universal covenant, and you came and kidnapped us and trafficked us across an ocean. Took us to the Caribbean where you seasoned us. So, again, if you're anti-slavery, if you want to talk about, oh, we were part of the Underground Railroad and we were abolitionists and then I don't understand what the problem is.
So Here's an interesting thing. If as we look at Unitarian Universalist history on this consolidation day, we like to think that quote unquote we were abolitionists.
Oh, the hell we weren't.
But neither Unitarians nor Universalists actually had consensus on that. And while there were Unitarians and Universalists in the leadership of abolitionist movements, neither Unitarians nor Universalists actually had consensus on that. And so neither of our forebear denominations nor our current one has ever embraced the abolition of slavery as a theological point.
That does not shock me. We can't even say the word white supremacy or anti-racism or anything else. Jesus, it's part of our history of just arguing instead of doing the work of what is obviously.
I think it's time we do that, which is one of the reasons why we're proposing this congregational study action issue.
That's right.
Theodore Parker was ostracized by his entire collegial community because he was an abolitionist
in Massachusetts.
I
just want to say like where he was.
So right. Yeah, he was sort of like down by Dorchester. And at that time, ministers would generally write one huge freaking sermon a month, usually like 20,000 words, right? Just this god-awful thing. And then they would preach it the first Sunday at their church, and then they would like move it around, right? They'd share the pulpit, and nobody would come to where he was, and nobody would let him in their pulpit. So he wrote 52 sermons a year. And if you want to watch somebody's theology expand and grow firmer, read his sermons with that history in mind, because he gets less and less friendly about it the longer he goes. He's like, no, there's no compromise on this. This is bullshit, and he becomes more and more hardened.
Well, and Theodore Parker is such an interesting case because I don't think we can mention him and his commitment to abolition without also acknowledging that he was also a white supremacist. So
I'm not as familiar with it. Please tell me.
He didn't believe that black people were equal to white people. He just believed that they were humans and deserved not to be enslaved. He didn't need to believe in humanity to believe that humans should
even
not
splitting that hair was too much for the muckety mucks in Boston.
Yes.
Can I make a little bit of a tangent?
Oh,
That's
please,
sort of
tangent away.
Well, so Stephen King tweeted something and made it, or whatever, social media, Blue Sky, about and I'm not going to repeat the horrible thing the current president said about the Haitians on the campaign trail, but it was referencing that. And when black women, especially black people, said, hey, because white liberals, leftists laughed at it, and black activists and black were like, hey, this is really racist. Don't repeat this. It's not funny. And white liberals, again, we're supposed to be on the same side,
lost their shit
after these women, black people and activists and black women. Like, I mean, it's okay. So I guess what my reaction is to Theodore Parker, and so was Lincoln. Lincoln was a racist fuck. Yes, he had emancipation because he just didn't want the country to be split. He didn't give a fuck about black people. No. And so the thing that continues in this country and continues, it's part of the fabric, is this notion of what the kind of racism that has been acceptable, which is why we are where we are. So when I hear white liberals say, oh, this is, especially 2016 with the first election of this first go around, they're like, oh, this isn't my country. This isn't the country I recognize. I'm like, what country do you think you've been in? Then you're just saying volumes about your own ignorance and your willful ignorance, especially when you think you want the world to be better. And this is Kimberly Hampton, may you rest in power forever, would tell white people, read Letter from a Birmingham Jail at least once a year, if not more, because
Mhm.
this is the entirety. Don't just quote Goodreads
Right.
and the. But I'm looking at Dante, wanting Dante's response to this, because I think even when we have, and here I go. I went on a journey. I'm bringing it back. When we
Okay.
talk about abolition, and I hear, especially white people, and it's not just white people, but there was a time in this country where people couldn't imagine the country without slavery. Even the people who spoke against it, they wanted Black people to not be enslaved, but it's okay if they were discriminated against. So there's been a lack of imagination of what it means to be in a liberated space. Dante's thinking very hard.
So I'm all about pattern recognition. So just walk with me for a minute. I want you to hold your image of a slave ship, what you understand that to be. Now add to that your understanding of what a plantation is. Now add to that what you understand a high-rise project is. Now add to that your understanding of a modern day prison. They're all the fucking same. They're all the same. And I didn't make that up. I didn't design slave ships, prisons, nor plantations, nor high-rise, low-income housing. I didn't design any of that shit. But it's all the same. It's a warehousing of human beings.
Because they are, and the theology is because they are property, because they are fuel for the capitalist engine and not people.
Right. And let's be clear, people but they did wrong things. They were convicted of wrong things. Do you know how many people are sitting in county jails for 3 and 5 and 10 years? They haven't even been to trial yet.
That's right.
Yep.
Cook County, when you go into Cook County, you there. You may be there for 5, 6, 7 years before you ever get a trial. So you're warehoused at the accusation of crime.
Well, and in New York City, they kind of hope you die in Rikers Island before they have to bring you to trial because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the cruelty is the point.
You know, and we live in a country where you're as healthy as you can afford, and you're as free as you can afford.
Right.
Because if you can afford good representation, you can avoid prison. No, whether you're guilty or not, is not the point.
That's.
But if you got to depend on a public defender with the 60 people on their caseload, maybe they're gonna plead you down and put you in.
That's right.
They're not trying to get you free. They don't make enough money for that.
Right. That's right. 1,000%. That's the other thing that needs to be part of the conversation is who can afford to stay out of prison. And, unless, that I think there needs to be, again, Unitarian Universalists, we're inviting you to vote on studying this for 3 years or so. I mean, listen, it's good. It's good to do that.
And so if we're going to study this, we're going to start with what's our theology?
Yes.
Right? Like, how does our theology inform how we live? How does our theology inform the policies in our churches? How does our theology inform the policies we want to advocate for in our community, in our state, in our nation? Because it has to be grounded there. It has to be rooted there, and it has to also be accountable. I want to bring accountability into this, because one of the reasons why the Church of the Larger Fellowship is proposing this CSAI Congregational Study Action Issue is that our congregation, the congregation that brings you the VU, includes almost 2,000, and like it'll be over 2,000 any day now, incarcerated Unitarian Universalists. People who have made a covenantal commitment to our faith, even though they are incarcerated right now. Right? So to almost 2,000 people who are enslaved in 47 states and the District of Columbia. I did all the numbers this morning, beloveds. I did all the numbers. And we provide ministry to those folks, and we are then accountable to what they want our faith to be. So we're bringing their voices into this, and 2,000 Unitarian Universalists is roughly 1% of Unitarian Universalists in the United States. And I think our whole faith needs to be accountable to those 2,000 people.
We affirm the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And to your point, Michael, in order to be accountable to that affirmation of life, we are incumbent on studying abolition and beginning to imagine a world that is not predicated on punishment all the time in this country. And we begin, I mean, people living in feudal systems could not imagine life without monarchs and without lords and ladies. And right now we make fun of them on social media. They are not in charge of people's lives in the way they were when there was a feudal system, right? The world could not imagine a lot of things, and then we imagine it. So we can imagine in the United States a world, a society that is different. And when we begin to imagine it, a more caring, a more just, I've said this before, but what is so like my pet peeve is horror and gruesomeness, caging children. For some fucking reason, that is something people say and make happen, and nobody goes, that's unrealistic. That doesn't, but like when we lean into imagination of care and love and not caging people, including fucking children, which we do here. And when we say, hey, let's lean into something good. Oh, that's not realistic. Are you fucking kidding me? The prison industrial complex is fucking realistic because it is cruel. Our cruelty is realistic, but love and liberation is not realistic. Let's open our imaginations, people. That's what we are called to do. That is why I'm a Unitarian Universalist. I refuse to believe in this theology of suffering and gruesomeness and punishment and cruelty and awfulness. Why is that realistic? And I am thinking of what's been going on in Gaza that has gotten fucking worse and worse and worse by the fucking second, because I keep being told that in order for one country to fucking defend itself, I know I'm going way off the rails right now, but it is a lack of imagination to think we could fucking live in peace and not be cruel to each other.
And can't we just have an honest conversation here? I know, okay, let's say some people can't wrap their mind around abolition, right? But you believe the guilty should be punished. But which guilty? Because the perpetrators of genocide are not fucking locked up.
Hello, say that.
The police who kill indiscriminately in these communities, they're not being locked up.
Hello.
Mm-hmm.
People stealing wages from low-income workers are not being locked up.
Hello.
Stealing people's retirement funds, and those people are not. So, who are in the people who are being warehoused are the poor.
Right.
Right.
The ones with no resources.
So how can we imagine? And again, I don't know if I've told y'all this. My mother was a federal prison guard for a big chunk of my childhood. It paid the wages. It put food in my mouth and a roof over my head. My mother was in the federal prison system her whole career. And I remember when I got close to graduating college, she kept saying, I can always get you. And I was like, that's okay. That's that's okay. But I also think in this interrogation of abolition in prison, we have to also hold and dig into the trauma that people have experienced that makes them more comforted in thinking people who do bad things are put away.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I say that because my mother is a person who suffered a lot of bad things.
Yes.
That she should have never had to experience. And I think there may be something that feels affirming, that maybe the people who did bad things to you are not put away, but somebody is. And that's, again, all this stuff is nuanced. It's complicated. And, again, I'm a descendant of not only trafficked and enslaved Africans. White people blew up my town. They lynched 30 people because of a strike. I have a hard time thinking that Derek Chauvin is going to end up where my sweet grandmother is going on the other side. Like, I don't know if I want my theology to say that somehow, I believe that we universally are all created in the image of the source, right? That's very easy for me. I believe that we all have an opportunity to evolve ourselves into the, sort of best version of ourselves with the, and that we can and as embodied beings. I believe that too. And I believe that people also get to choose if they want to do that. And some people don't. And I'm not. I mean, do you get to blow up a neighborhood and then be like, oh, my bad, sorry, and now you have universal pardon for that? There's no karmic like.
So this is also something that has to be part of the study, right? What does repentance and repair mean? Right? If you do something that causes harm, what does it mean to repair that harm? What does it mean to make amends for that harm? Right? Anyone who's ever done the steps of a recovery program has had to think about what it means to make amends for the harm that they cause. Like, we as a nation are addicted to violence. Part of our overcoming that addiction is, what is it called? What does it mean to make amends for that violence? Like, can you make amends for bombing a neighborhood? I don't know if you can. And I'm not going to say, oh, sure you can. And I don't know that you can. But, like, are there things you can make amends for that are stuff we lock people in solitary confinement for?
But the problem is, I think that we're way more comfortable, just like with individual pietistic salvation, we're way more comfortable with individual repentance and amends, but we are not comfortable with sociological, institutional repentance and amends.
So what does reparations look like? Has to be part of this conversation too, right?
Universal basic income, guaranteed housing, universal health care to start.
Education,
universal health care, guaranteed housing to start. Then we could talk about education. Then we could talk about writing the checks to the descendants of enslaved Africans and to the indigenous population. But we have to start. The reason we don't have those things is anti-Black racism. I am hot today.
One of our Winger mentions wanting to see a conversation about DV, domestic violence, partner violence, and and abolition. And I can tell you, as a person who worked for 6 years at the National Office of the YWCA, where domestic violence prevention work is a big part of the work that we did there, there was a huge tension when we started doing racial justice work with our domestic violence folk, because there were all these rules of these very highly punitive statutes that people wanted to get passed locally. And the racial justice folks were like, you know that's going to be unequally applied to Black and brown people. Like, we can't support this. They're like, but perpetrators have to be held accountable. Yeah, so that was a really live thing. I worked there.
Police officers are notorious for DV themselves. Derek Chauvin, somebody mentioned him, had a string of issues involving domestic violence. So who gets away with that as well? So this is, again, a systemic support societally that is, because Michael, when you were talking about repair, I think this is the part that's complicated about transforming society as we stop having this transaction. Somebody said transactional, you do something wrong and here's the price you pay. But not everybody who's doing the wrong things or engaging in violent acts and are being punished. They're not. Some are being protected.
Right.
And so I think I think it's, I lost my thread. I'm going to be quiet now.
I was like, where's she going? I'm looking forward to this.
No idea. I lost my own. The car left the station and didn't come back. Sorry.
Well, I feel like I'm trying to pick up on the trail though, because those 3 Black men officers in Memphis who beat that man just got off. They just got, and people say, well, oh, they're Black. I don't care. They're police. There's police culture. And don't tell me, well, we need more diversity. It don't matter. It's the culture of policing. It is the culture of slave catchers. That's what it is. And I don't care where you're from. You're either going to engage in the bullshit or you're going to silently witness it, because that's what the culture requires, period. So, yeah, go ahead.
And, part of what we have to grapple with is that, like you were saying, a law that's passed into a racist society, into a classist society, gets unequally enforced, gets disproportionately enforced, right? The people who are convicted of it are going to be disproportionately BIPOC people. They're going to be disproportionately poor people. When we when states are passing laws about, gender identity, it's the trans people that are going to get disproportionately prosecuted for the same things that other people are doing, right? Like, let's just be really clear that the farther you are away from power, the more likely you are to be disproportionately affected by criminal, by the criminal justice system, by the theologies of power. And I don't want to, with 4 minutes left in our show, inject another contentious term into our show, but that's what critical race theory is. Critical race theory is studying how one law can be used disproportionately to affect people of color, to incarcerate people of color, and not incarcerate white people, even though it's the same law. So that's what that's why law schools teach critical race theory, and why kindergartens do not.
Hello.
So I want to bring up Darby's comments. Darby says, I'm also a DV survivor. I've been able to find a lot of healing and compassion, and am now able to be in a limited relationship with my ex. We knew each other from childhood. and I understand it was what he saw growing up, and he didn't understand that there were other ways to be in a relationship.
I just have to take a breath.
For what it's worth,
Yeah.
I grew up with a narcissistic, abusive parent, and I am sure my earliest relationships were absolutely horrid for my partners. And I have spent a lifetime learning and trying and learning and trying. For a long time, I used to say my biggest fear, like one of the things that kept me from a trans identity and transitioning to a masculine presence, was I did not want to be my father.
Yeah.
And I look in the mirror now and I'm like, God damn, where did that guy come from?
Yeah.
Like, thanks, Dad, right? And Mom with the baldness. But I know, like, I had no other model for how to be in a relationship but cruelty and control. And with every relationship, I've learned. With every relationship, I've grown. With all of the work that I've engaged in on my own, I've learned and grown. But I know that I did terrible harm to good people. And part of that was I didn't know how to not do that. I didn't have any other models for what it was to be in relationship.
Ooh, say that, please, Aisha. Aisha just put something in our chat, in our private chat.
I was thinking about, as you were talking, DC, no other model for relationship with cruelty. That is the United States in a nutshell. We are just a violent society, and we need, that is what the invitation is for this CSAI, to engage, expanding our imagination to living in a society that centers kindness and care and not cruelty.
And how do we disrupt those cycles? Those cycles of violence and trauma and abuse.
Right. We can study it for the next 3 years. Come on, Unitarians, we can do this.
Yeah, they have to be ended.
But to study it also means you have to be willing to let go of the narratives that you hold on to that bring you comfort.
Yeah.
That affected you in acute moments of trauma, but they are no longer serving you.
Right. Right.
Yes.
You know, my first memory is of a person causing harm to a member of my family. That's my first memory. That's my first memory in life. And if I was big and strong enough, I would have hurt that person unequivocally. I would have done it.
Sure.
You know, and I have to live with that, right? And I have to take my personal lived experience and place it in a context. Right? Like that shit, it was real. It happened to me. It affects me on a daily basis.
But that's not easy.
No.
Hell no.
That's probably years of therapy that we don't have to get into at 12:58 p.m. But like that, those years of therapy need to be available.
Yes.
Radically available to everyone who needs them.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did during seminary was I attended a series of very woo weekend retreats by the Human Awareness Institute. And they start out talking about sex, love, and relationships, and how to do intimacy in ways that do not harm. And I've heard people refer to the weekends as like having emotional open heart surgery while you're awake. And one of the things that the lessons that keeps coming back to me, there's a practice in one of the sessions where two people are partnered up, and one person talks and the other person says, "And how does that serve you?" Let me you can't do that for 90 seconds and not get way deeper than you wanted to. When you're sitting in each other's lap and looking at each other and saying, and how does that serve you?
Yeah.
And what do I, and between that and the 12-step work, I consider those two things to have been perhaps more significantly emotionally developing than my work in seminary.
Oh, I see.
Because if I had just gone through seminary, I would be the very educated asshole that I went in.
Oh.
Now I'm very educated and hopefully less of an asshole. I have my days.
We all do. So it's 1:00.
Yes.
I want to wrap up by asking Unitarian Universalists out there to think about how the systems that we have in place serves us. How do those systems serve us? Is such a good question to end on, because that's what we want. We want us to unpack.
And also, Michael, did you drop the link where they can buy their supportive T-shirts?
Oh, I didn't.
I was wearing mine a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, you showed it off for us.
I did, but today I'm like moving shit. So
Get your Church of the Larger Fellowship swag.
There you go.
You can get. Hold on.
And they're in that unholy yellow. Good Lord, why yellow?
They'll be available in more colors after GA, but we want them to be visible at General Assembly. You can get your Abolition T-shirt. A portion of the proceeds from every sale of our Abolition gear are going to go to the commissary of Michael W., our incarcerated member who drew this beautiful chalice. Or you could get Church of the Larger Fellowship swag.
Yes.
Ooh. Okay.
Including tote bags.
Nice.
Everyone needs a General Assembly. Everyone needs a canvas.
No kidding.
All your crap. For all those books at the bookstore. So get your tote bags and your T-shirts, and we'll see you in Baltimore, and we'll see you next week.
Next week?
On the VU.
We'll be here.
Well,
Thanks,
bye,
everybody.
everybody.
This was beautiful.
It was.
It
Thank
was
you.
really hard and good. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit clfuu.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The View.